The galaxy had seen many wars before humanity arrived among the stars. Ancient empires, old beyond memory, had fought battles for territory and pride. Some races had ruled for thousands of years, and others had fallen into dust. Humans were latecomers, newcomers to the grand stage. To most of the elder species, humanity was small, fragile, and untested. Yet in the quiet edges of human space, storms were rising. The coalition of elder races, bound together by fear of human growth, began to whisper about a final strike. They said humans multiplied too quickly, spread too far, and dared to settle worlds that others had ignored for centuries. They said humans would never respect old borders. To them, humanity was not just a problem, it was a threat to their order. On the world of Kessin, far from Earth, fleets gathered. Thousands of alien ships formed into lines across the void. They carried banners of ancient power, weapons built over long ages, and confidence born from past victories. Their plan was simple. Strike at human colonies first. Break their will. Destroy their fleets before they could stand. Then demand surrender. While the coalition plotted, humanity prepared in silence. For decades, they had studied alien technology, not as imitators but as innovators. They took what others had discarded as impossible and reshaped it into new ideas. Engineers on Luna worked beneath the surface of the gray moon, building engines that bent the rules of travel. Shipwrights in the vast yards above Titan crafted armor that could endure more punishment than anyone thought possible. On hidden stations near the edge of the Sol system, weapons were tested that could twist light and turn it into fire. All of this effort pointed to one creation. A ship not built to match others, but to rise above them. A ship not called a vessel, but a flagship. Its name was Resolute. The Resolute was unlike any ship humanity had ever launched. It was longer than the tallest towers of Earth stacked end to end, with a hull dark as obsidian. Layers of armor covered its surface like scales, each designed to seal itself if struck. Deep inside its core, a new kind of engine pulsed, a jump drive untested in real combat. At the heart of its design was not fear, but determination. The builders knew that numbers could not win against the coalition. Humanity had fewer colonies, fewer fleets, and less experience in war. What they had instead was will. The Resolute was proof of that will, a weapon born not only to defend but to announce that humans would no longer bow to elder powers. When word spread of the coalition's advance, humanity did not call for retreat. Messages were sent across every colony, from the domes on Mars to the stations above distant worlds. The call was simple. Stand ready. Stand together. Inside the halls of the Resolute, the crew prepared. There were no illusions. Each officer knew the coalition had thousands of ships. Each technician understood the risks of untested engines and weapons. Yet not one faltered. They did not serve only for Earth or for one colony. They served for all of humanity. Captain Ryan stood on the command deck as the ship's systems came alive. He was not the strongest or the fastest of his people, but he carried calm in his voice and certainty in his gaze. He looked upon his crew and spoke of duty, of unity, of the storm that waited ahead. His words were steady. Humanity did not seek conquest, he said, but neither would it kneel. The crew answered with silent nods and firm hands. Outside, the void stretched endless and cold. Stars glimmered like distant fires, indifferent to the struggles of those who lived beneath them. Yet within that endless night, the Resolute carried the light of a young species refusing to be broken. The coalition believed victory would be swift. They had seen humans as fragile. They had measured human fleets and found them small. What they had not measured was the depth of human resolve. As the flagship prepared to leave dock, silence fell across the system. Civilian ships moved aside to watch. Families, workers, and travelers looked up from windows and domes, staring at the giant shape as it drifted free of the shipyards. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the most distant stations paused their transmissions. The Resolute began its journey with engines burning white, its hull gleaming against the dark. It carried not only weapons, but hope. It carried the weight of every human who had ever dreamed of a future among the stars. Far away, on the world of Kessin, the Coalition armada stirred. Their scouts reported human movements, but none understood the scale of what had been built. None of them yet knew the name of the ship that would soon meet them. None of them yet realized that silence would one day sweep the cosmos when humanity's flagship jumped into combat. The storm was no longer gathering. It had begun. The Resolute moved through space like a shadow cast upon the stars. Its engines hummed with controlled power, and its hull reflected no signal to enemy eyes. Every system was checked and rechecked as the crew settled into the rhythm of duty. Each member knew that the first encounter could decide not only their fate but also the fate of humanity. The Coalition armada was already in motion. Their ships, countless in number, swept into human space with the confidence of old conquerors. They moved as if victory was already written. On their command decks, admirals spoke of how fragile humans would scatter. They expected fear. They expected surrender. They expected to teach a lesson that would be remembered for generations. Yet in the deep silence between the stars, the Resolute advanced. Captain Ryan stood on the command deck, hands resting lightly on the rail as streams of data filled the air. Holographic displays showed enemy movements across nearby sectors. Scouts reported colonies under threat. Already, the first human defense lines had been brushed aside. Civilian transports ran for shelter, escorted by smaller ships that fought bravely but could not hold for long. "Set course," Ryan ordered. His voice was steady, calm, carrying no sign of hesitation. "We meet them before they reach the heart." The flagship turned, engines burning brighter as it cut across the dark. The crew worked in silence, their faces lit by glowing screens. None of them doubted the path. They had been chosen for this ship because they believed. As the Resolute closed the distance, the Coalition scouts were the first to notice. Small vessels at the edge of the enemy lines picked up faint readings. At first, they assumed it was another human cruiser, one more ship to crush. Then the readings grew clearer, stranger, unlike anything in their records. Reports spread quickly. The humans had built something new. The elders dismissed the warning, certain no newcomer could change the balance of power with a single ship. But unease began to creep through their ranks. When the Resolute finally emerged from the shadow of a gas giant, the battlefield held its breath. Before the Coalition fleet stretched in ordered lines, a formation of hundreds upon hundreds of warships. Towers of metal and fire, built for destruction. Against them drifted one ship. One single human flagship. For a moment, even the enemy fell silent. Then laughter echoed across their channels. "Do they think one ship can face us?" an alien commander asked. "Bold but foolish," another replied. "Crush it quickly, then move on," ordered the admiral. The order was given. Waves of ships surged forward, weapons glowing. Energy lit the dark as beams, missiles, and firestorms arced toward the lone vessel. The first move of the Coalition was overwhelming, as if the sky itself had turned against humanity. But the Resolute did not flinch. Its hull lit up with shimmering layers of protection. Energy barriers unfolded like wings, bending the streams of fire. Armor plates glowed but did not break. The ship's massive frame cut through the storm like a mountain standing against the sea. Then came the human answer. The flagship's cannons awakened, not with sound but with blinding light. Lances of focused energy leapt across the void, striking with precision. Coalition ships that had expected easy kills were torn apart in a single breath. Entire wings shattered as beams pierced through their shields. Silence fell across enemy channels. Shock replaced laughter. The Resolute advanced step by step, fire answering fire. Its weapons were not only strong but smart. They cut through weak points, striking where shields overlapped or where armor was thinnest. Human engineers had studied their foes for years, and every weakness was now a target. Still, the numbers pressed on. The coalition had hundreds more ships. Their lines folded into tighter formations. Commanders barked orders, determined to surround the lone enemy. They would drown it in fire if brute strength could not prevail. Inside the Resolute, the crew worked as one. Every officer trusted the others, every technician believed in the systems they had built. On the bridge, Ryan's voice guided them like a calm river. "Hold course," he said. "Return fire," he ordered. "Stay steady," he reminded. And they did. The first clash lasted hours. Space itself seemed to burn as light crossed light, as ships fell in flames and silence. Human colonies watched from afar, their screens filled with the sight of the flagship standing alone against the tide. Hope rose where fear had lived before. At last, the coalition admiral gave a sharper command. They had underestimated the humans, but now they would end the fight with full force. Entire squadrons were redirected. More ships were pulled from reserve lines. The encirclement began. On the Resolute, alarms filled the air. Enemy formations were closing fast. The crew knew the ship would soon be surrounded. Captain Ryan stood firm, his eyes on the growing storm. He did not see despair in his crew. He saw fire. "The first move is ours," he said quietly. "Now we show them what humanity can endure." And so the Resolute held its course as the coalition closed in, the flagship unbroken, its crew unshaken. The battle was far from over. The storm was only growing stronger. The coalition armada closed in like a tightening net. Their ships curved through the void, thousands of them forming a vast circle of fire around the lone human flagship. It was a sight that many alien commanders believed no vessel could endure. Numbers had always won wars, and the coalition had more numbers than any fleet in living memory. The Resolute stood at the center of it all. Its hull carried scars from hours of battle, glowing lines where armor had taken the full fury of enemy fire. Yet the ship did not falter. Shields bent, systems strained, but the great vessel pressed forward like a living thing that refused to yield. Inside the flagship, the crew worked with calm intensity. Every station pulsed with light, every voice clear and steady. The bridge was alive with streams of information, showing enemy movements in every direction. Officers tracked the circling ships, marking their patterns. They could see what was coming. The coalition planned to strike all at once, a crushing blow from every side, enough to overwhelm even this new human creation. Captain Ryan stood tall in the command chair, his hands gripping the rail as the map filled with red markers. He did not hide the truth from his crew. The enemy was preparing a final assault that could end them. But he also did not allow fear to touch his words. "We hold," he said. "We strike back. We show them what one ship can do." The moment came. Coalition ships unleashed their combined fury. A wall of fire fell upon the Resolute from every side. Beams cut across space, missiles streaked like rivers of light, and shock waves rippled as weapons burned the darkness. For a heartbeat, the human flagship was swallowed in the storm, lost beneath a sea of flame. Observers watching from distant colonies held their breath. Had it been destroyed? Was it over already? Then the storm parted. From within the fury, the Resolute emerged, its shields glowing brighter than the stars. Armor cracked but held, systems dimmed but endured. The ship did not break. Instead, it answered. The flagship's weapons roared to life. Beams of light struck outward in every direction, not scattered but chosen. Each shot carried knowledge of enemy weaknesses, knowledge humans had gathered through years of careful study. Coalition cruisers exploded in fire. Battleships cracked apart under precision strikes. Entire wings were shredded before they could close the distance. What had been laughter among enemy ranks turned into silence, and then into fear. One alien commander shouted across channels, "This is not possible. No single ship should do this." Another replied, "It fights as if it knows us better than we know ourselves." The truth was simple. Humanity had learned. For all their short years among the stars, humans had studied every race that had doubted them. Where others had grown lazy with age, humans had grown sharp. The Resolute was not only a weapon of fire and steel but of knowledge, built with the lessons of 100 alien wars that humans had never fought but had carefully observed. Still, the coalition pressed on. Their pride would not let them retreat. Waves of ships filled the void, determined to drown the lone enemy. They rushed forward, thinking numbers would eventually succeed. That was when the Resolute revealed its true power. Deep in the core of the flagship, a new weapon waited, one untested in any battle. Engineers had named it the Lightwave Cannon. Unlike normal weapons, it did not simply fire beams or missiles. It bent light itself, gathering it into a pulse that could tear through anything in its path. "Ready the light wave," Ryan ordered. The crew obeyed. Energy drained from the reactors, systems dimmed across the ship, and for a moment the Resolute seemed to fall silent. Then a deep hum spread through its hull, rising like a heartbeat. Across the battlefield, enemy sensors screamed warnings. They had never seen this kind of buildup. They did not understand what was coming. Then the flagship fired. The lightwave cannon released a pulse that tore across the void like dawn breaking through night. A single sweep of energy cut through the enemy line. Ships shattered, shields collapsed, and the very fabric of space seemed to tremble. The shock wave rolled outward, leaving silence in its wake. Where once hundreds of coalition ships had stood, only wreckage drifted. The battlefield froze. Even the enemy commanders stopped speaking. For the first time in generations, the coalition armada had no answer. Against thousands, one ship had turned the tide with a single strike. On the bridge of the Resolute, the crew sat in silence, their hearts pounding. They had seen their creation tested in fire, and it had endured. Ryan broke the silence with calm words. "This is the beginning. They know us now. They will never forget." Around him, officers nodded. They understood. The battle was far from finished. The enemy still outnumbered them. But the galaxy had witnessed something it had never seen before. The humans had struck a blow that shook the old order. They had proven that strength was not only in numbers, but in will, in unity, and in the courage to create something new. The coalition armada still circled, but no longer with the same confidence. Doubt had entered their hearts. Fear had touched their commanders. And somewhere, Deep in the silence after the light wave's blast, the galaxy itself seemed to pause, as if listening. The Resolute had spoken, and its voice was thunder. The battlefield hung in uneasy silence after the light wave cannon fired. The wreckage of destroyed ships drifted like broken stars, their flames dimming into cold shadows. For the first time, the coalition armada hesitated. Their commanders, who once spoke with pride and certainty, now whispered among themselves. What had they faced? How had a single human flagship struck down so many in one moment? Yet pride was a powerful chain. The elder races had ruled the galaxy for ages. To retreat before humans, the youngest of them all, was unthinkable. Pride demanded they fight on. Orders echoed across their fleets. No surrender. No retreat. Encircle the enemy. End this battle, no matter the cost. The coalition's ships began to shift into new patterns. Waves of smaller craft swept forward to test the Resolute's defenses, while heavier battleships pulled into place behind them. The plan was clear. They would not allow the human flagship room to maneuver. They would surround it completely and bury it beneath endless fire. On the Resolute's bridge, the crew watched the trap forming. Enemy markers filled the displays until the flagship stood at the center of a tightening circle. First Officer Lyra spoke softly, "They mean to crush us. Every path is closing." Captain Ryan studied the shifting lights with calm eyes. He knew what the enemy planned. He also knew the Resolute was powerful, but not invincible. Its armor had held, its shields had endured, and the light wave cannon had struck fear into the coalition, but no ship could fight forever. "They think numbers will break us," Ryan said at last. "But numbers alone cannot win." The crew listened. No one spoke of retreat. No one asked to flee. They understood their place in history. As the coalition advanced, the Resolute struck back. Its weapons flared again and again, cutting down enemy ships as they closed the circle. Fighters burned, cruisers fell apart, and the wreckage piled higher. Yet for every ship destroyed, more took its place. Slowly, surely, the ring drew tighter. The flagship shook as volleys of fire struck from every side. Shields dimmed, alarms sounded, and engineers raced to keep systems alive. The void outside glowed with ceaseless explosions. The crew felt the pressure of being surrounded, yet no one faltered. Ryan looked upon his officers. "We stand at the edge. If we break here, humanity breaks with us. But if we endure, if we strike where they do not expect, the galaxy itself will change." He gave the order. "Prepare the jump core." Silence filled the bridge. The jump core was the most dangerous system on the Resolute. It was designed to move the ship across vast distances in an instant. But it had never been tested inside battle. To use it now, in the heart of a storm, was to risk everything. If it failed, the ship would tear itself apart. Yet the crew did not hesitate. They began the sequence. Energy flowed from the reactors into the heart of the engine. The hum of the ship deepened, vibrating through every wall. The coalition commanders saw the readings. They grew uncertain. "The human ship is charging something," one warned. "What are they doing?" another asked. No one knew. Fear returned, but pride demanded they hold their ground. The circle closed. Fire poured upon the Resolute. Its shields flared and buckled. Armor cracked and sealed again. The flagship trembled, its frame groaning under the endless weight of war. Still, the jump core gathered power. On the bridge, Ryan stood unmoved. "Hold steady," he said. "Do not fear the storm. We are the storm. The moment came. With a roar of energy, the jump core activated. Light burst from the ship in all directions. For an instant, the Resolute vanished from space, swallowed in brilliance. Then the brilliance expanded. The surrounding coalition ships were caught in the wake. Their shields collapsed, their hulls twisted, their fleets torn apart by forces beyond their control. In one heartbeat, the encirclement shattered. Hundreds of enemy ships vanished into nothingness, consumed by the jump shock. When the light faded, the void fell silent. Where once a proud armada had stood, there was wreckage drifting in the dark. The Resolute reappeared beyond the shattered lines, scarred but alive, still burning with defiance. The coalition fell into confusion. Their admirals shouted conflicting orders. Some called for retreat. Others screamed for another attack. Fear spread faster than command. Never before had they seen such power unleashed by one ship. On the Resolute, the crew stared in awe at what they had survived. They had used the most dangerous system of their ship and lived. They had not only endured but broken the circle that was meant to end them. Ryan's voice cut through the silence. We are not finished. They will come again. But today, we have shown them the truth. Humanity will not be caged. Humanity will not kneel. From this moment, every star knows it. The crew answered with steady nods. They were tired, battered, and carrying wounds, but they were unbroken. In that moment, the battle shifted. It was no longer the coalition's war to win with numbers. It had become a struggle against the spirit of a people who refused to fall. The Resolute had turned the tide, and the galaxy would never forget the day one ship stood against thousands and lived. The galaxy had seen battles before, but never had it seen silence spread so wide and so deep. When the Resolute unleashed the jump core in the heart of combat, the aftermath was more than destruction. It was the kind of stillness that reached across sensors, across broadcasts, and across the minds of every watcher. The wreckage of the coalition's encirclement drifted in shattered silence. Ships once thought unbreakable were now debris scattered like dust. Engines burned weakly before flickering out. Beacons of distress called into the void, unanswered. Every listening post across human colonies and distant neutral systems heard the same thing: nothing. The furious noise of thousands of ships firing at once was gone. Where there had been thunder, there was now quiet. Where there had been overwhelming strength, there was now only absence. On the Resolute, the crew felt that silence like a weight pressing on their chests. The jump had nearly torn the ship apart. Systems sparked, corridors trembled, and engineers worked frantically to restore power. Yet the flagship still lived. Scarred but alive, it stood against the stars as proof of what humans could endure. Captain Ryan surveyed the bridge. Officers spoke in low voices, running checks on navigation and weapons. Their hands moved with discipline, but in their eyes shone the fire of triumph. They knew they had survived what should have been impossible. Status? Ryan asked. Shields at half strength, answered Lyra. Weapons still operational. Engines unstable but holding. The jump core is drained. It will need time before it can charge again. Ryan gave a single nod. We are still here. That was all that mattered. Across the battlefield, coalition ships that had survived the shock trembled in disorder. Their admirals tried to regain control, shouting orders into broken channels. But fear had taken hold. The invincible force they believed in had been shattered by one ship. Doubt spread like fire in dry grass. Some captains began retreating without orders, pulling back their ships before the human flagship could strike again. Others tried to regroup, their pride refusing to allow retreat. Yet no matter what they commanded, their fleets no longer moved with certainty. The silence of their losses spoke louder than their voices. Messages spread through the galaxy faster than ships could fly. Traders, spies, and observers carried tales of the battle. They spoke of a human ship that stood alone against thousands. They spoke of a cannon that tore through lines of warships. They spoke of a jump that swallowed fleets in a storm of light. Each retelling grew, and with each retelling, the silence of the coalition's failure became heavier. For centuries, the elder races had claimed authority through age and memory. They reminded younger races of their ancient victories and warned them not to rise too far. But now, a younger race had faced them in open combat and lived. Worse still, humanity had struck fear into them. The silence was no longer just on the battlefield. It echoed through councils, halls, and hidden chambers across the stars. Inside the Resolute, the silence carried a different meaning. To the crew, it was the stillness before another storm. They knew the battle was not over. The coalition still had fleets in reserve, and the war would continue. But they also knew something greater had changed. For the first time, humanity was no longer underestimated. Ryan stood before his officers and spoke. His voice was steady, carrying across the tired but unbroken crew. We have made them pause. That pause is our victory. From this moment, every race knows who we are. Not invaders. Not weaklings. We are builders, fighters, survivors. We are human. The crew answered with nods and firm voices. They had seen death, they had seen fire, and they had seen silence sweep across a battlefield. Yet still they stood. The coalition attempted one last strike before retreating. A cluster of battleships pushed forward, desperate to reclaim honor. Their weapons lit up the void, but their fire was scattered. The Resolute answered with calm precision. Its beams cut through the advancing ships, each shot placed with unshakable accuracy. The enemy broke apart before they could even close the gap. And then the silence returned. No more charges came. No more encirclements formed. The coalition fleet, once proud and countless, pulled away. The order had finally been given. Retreat. For the first time in living memory, the elder races had fled before a younger one. The void grew still. The crew of the Resolute looked upon the battlefield they had survived. Wreckage drifted like monuments to the day humanity had stood unyielding. The silence was not empty. It was filled with meaning. It was the silence of fear in the hearts of their enemies. It was the silence of awe in the minds of their allies. It was the silence of history being rewritten. And as the Resolute turned its course to rejoin the scattered human fleets, the silence followed. Across stars and across worlds, it whispered of a future that could no longer be denied. Humanity had taken its place among the great powers, not as a subject, not as a servant, but as a force that would shape the cosmos. The battlefield was quiet now, but the echoes of battle lingered across the stars. Wrecked ships floated silently, drifting among the debris of the coalition armada. Human fleets had regrouped, gathering around the Resolute, their flagship still standing tall despite the scars of battle. The silence that followed the fight was heavy but filled with a sense of triumph. Captain Ryan walked the bridge, observing the crew as they repaired systems and monitored the remnants of enemy signals. Their hands moved with calm precision, their eyes sharp and focused. No one celebrated loudly. Victory here was measured in survival, in endurance, and in proving that humanity could stand against the galaxy's greatest powers. Reports from colonies. Ryan asked. Lieutenant Mara answered. All safe so far. Many civilian ships escaped thanks to our diversion. No major losses to colonies themselves. Ryan nodded. Good. That is what matters. Our people survive. That is the first victory. Everything else is the future. Beyond the fleet, the coalition armada limped into retreat. Broken, scattered, and uncertain, their ships moved slowly away from human space. Messages from their commanders were filled with confusion. Some argued to regroup and retaliate, others demanded return to their home systems to explain what had happened. Pride was shattered, and fear had replaced confidence. Across the galaxy, news spread rapidly. Traders, explorers, and independent colonies transmitted tales of the Resolute's battle. Stories of a single human flagship surviving against thousands became a legend within hours. Every word carried the truth of human resilience. Humanity was no longer a young race to be dismissed. They had proven themselves capable of facing impossible odds. The crew of the Resolute did not underestimate the danger still ahead. The coalition might regroup. Other forces could rise. Humanity had fought its first major battle in the stars, and it had won, but the war was far from over. Still, the victory had shifted the balance of respect. Allies and neutral observers now watched humanity with new eyes. On the flagship, engineers worked tirelessly to repair the light wave cannon and the jump core. The jump had nearly destroyed the ship's systems, leaving it weak but functional. Crews of technicians moved through corridors, checking engines, armor, and energy conduits. Even minor sparks drew immediate attention. Every detail mattered. Survival in the void required discipline and precision. Captain Ryan gathered his senior officers in the command chamber. They studied maps of nearby sectors, tracking enemy movements and observing the scattered remains of the coalition fleet. "We have shown them strength," Ryan said. "We have shown them that humans are not to be underestimated. But we must not stop. We must use this moment to prepare, to strengthen, and to expand our reach. Today we are survivors, tomorrow we are leaders." First Officer Lyra nodded. "Their forces are scattered. Many are wounded or destroyed. We can press our advantage, expand our colonies, and solidify defenses." "Yes," Ryan agreed. "But caution must guide us. They will return, stronger and wiser. Every action we take now shapes the battles to come. Humanity has earned the right to exist, but it must also earn the right to thrive." As repairs continued, the crew looked out of observation windows into the silent void. Stars glimmered as they always had, indifferent to the struggle of life and war. Yet for humans, every star held possibility. Every planet, every system, was a chance to grow, to explore, and to secure a place in the galaxy. News of the battle reached other races within days. Some expressed admiration, acknowledging human ingenuity and bravery. Others felt fear, realizing that the galaxy had changed. Humanity could no longer be treated as weak or expendable. Their fight had become a lesson in resilience and strategy. Even within human space, the battle inspired new generations. Engineers, pilots, and scholars studied the tactics and technology that had allowed one ship to withstand thousands. Children listened to tales of the Resolute, dreaming of joining its crew one day. Entire colonies felt the weight of possibility, understanding that survival required courage and unity. On the Resolute, Captain Ryan walked through corridors, observing the crew. They were tired, yes, but unbroken. They carried scars from the battle, but their eyes reflected determination. Each person understood that the victory was not only their own but humanity's. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had delivered a message: they would fight, they would endure, and they would rise. Ryan returned to the bridge and looked out at the stars. Beyond the wreckage of the coalition, new sectors awaited. New dangers, yes, but also new opportunities. Humanity's place in the cosmos was no longer uncertain. The battle had marked the beginning of a new era. The galaxy will remember today, Ryan said softly. And so will we. Humanity has survived. Humanity will thrive. And we will show the universe what it means to fight with heart and with mind. The crew of the Resolute stood with him, their hearts steady. The silence of the aftermath was no longer a threat but a promise. A promise that humans had faced the impossible, endured, and emerged stronger. Across the stars, humanity had written its first chapter in a saga that would echo for generations. The flagship drifted through the void, battered but alive. Wreckage of the enemy floated in every direction. Yet in the calm, a single truth remained: humans had fought, humans had survived, and humans had earned the respect of the galaxy. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the remnants of the destroyed fleet, the next chapter of the war was already beginning. The stars stretched endlessly around the Resolute, shining like distant lanterns in the dark. The flagship moved steadily through the void, carrying its crew and its story across the galaxy. After the battle, silence had settled, but it was no longer empty. It was a silence filled with meaning, a reminder that humanity had faced impossible odds and survived. Captain Ryan stood on the bridge, his hands resting lightly on the rail. He looked at his officers and the glowing maps of nearby sectors. The coalition armada had retreated, but they were not gone. Other fleets could arrive, other powers could rise, yet the lesson of the battle remained clear. Humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. First Officer Lyra approached him. Reports from the colonies are encouraging. They are rebuilding, reinforcing defenses, and spreading the word of the battle. Every system knows now that humans can stand against overwhelming odds. Ryan nodded. Good. But we do not celebrate victory for too long. This is the beginning of our place among the stars, not the end. We have shown strength. Now we must ensure that strength grows. The crew moved efficiently around the bridge, running checks and adjusting course. Engineers monitored the engines, scientists studied data from the battlefield, and communications officers transmitted messages to human colonies and allied observers. Every action was purposeful. Humanity's survival had been earned, and now its future required careful attention. Beyond the immediate systems, other races were watching. Stories of the Resolute's battle spread like wildfire. Elder species, once confident in their power, reconsidered their assumptions. Neutral systems that had remained distant or cautious now studied human fleets with respect and interest. The galaxy was taking note. Humanity had demonstrated not only courage but intelligence, unity, and ingenuity. On the flagship, the crew began to understand the weight of their actions. They had not only fought for survival but had carved a place for all humans in the galaxy. Every officer and sailor felt the responsibility of their role. Their actions would inspire future generations of humans who would travel further, fight harder, and explore deeper than ever before. Captain Ryan addressed his crew on the bridge. We have faced the impossible, he said. We have endured fire, destruction, and fear. We have survived against overwhelming odds. But our story does not end here. The galaxy will remember this day. Humanity will remember this day. And we will continue to build a future worthy of that memory. The crew responded with quiet determination. There were no cheers, only steady acknowledgement. They knew their strength was not in loud celebration but in the work that remained. Systems needed repair, colonies needed guidance, and the galaxy needed to see that humanity was not fleeting but enduring. In the days that followed, the Resolute became a symbol. Human ships followed its path through the stars, carrying supplies, reinforcements, and messages of hope. Colonies that had feared invasion now felt protected. Scientists and engineers studied the flagship's battle tactics and technology. Pilots trained to emulate its speed, accuracy, and discipline. Humanity had not only survived but had created a model for its own future. The coalition, shattered and confused, did not recover immediately. Their fleets retreated to distant systems, unsure of how to respond. Some factions began to propose peace, while others secretly planned revenge. But the memory of the jump core and the light wave cannon lingered in every mind. Humanity had shown that it could think, adapt, and overcome in ways that others had not anticipated. Captain Ryan spent hours walking the corridors of the flagship. He observed his crew repairing systems, studying data, and preparing for the future. He knew that the battle had changed them all. They had seen death, destruction, and silence, yet they remained unbroken. They had become living proof of the human spirit. The galaxy, too, had changed. Species that once looked down on humans now approached with caution or respect. Diplomats sought alliances, while scholars studied human ingenuity. Traders and explorers spoke of the Resolute in whispers and stories. The legacy of a single battle extended far beyond the stars where it had taken place. Ryan returned to the bridge as the flagship approached a new star system. The light of the sun reflected on the hull, revealing both scars and strength. The ship had been tested in the harshest conditions and had endured. It had carried humans into the future, proving that courage and determination could overcome even the most impossible odds. "Prepare to enter orbit," Ryan said. "Our colonies await guidance, and our people need leadership. Humanity moves forward, not backward." The crew acknowledged the order, moving with precision and purpose. The Resolute descended into the system, its presence a promise of protection and hope. Every light, every crew member, and every system represented the unity of humanity. In the years that followed, the Resolute's story became legend. Young humans dreamed of joining its crew. Engineers studied its design. Commanders remembered its battle tactics. Humanity had proven that a single species, united in purpose, could change the course of the galaxy. Captain Ryan stood on the bridge one last time before leaving on a diplomatic mission. He looked out at the stars and reflected on the journey. The galaxy had tested humans and found them capable. They had endured, they had fought, and they had emerged stronger. And so, the legacy of the Resolute lived on. A single ship, a single crew, and a single species had shown that humans were not only survivors but leaders. They had faced impossible odds, rewritten history, and claimed their place among the stars. Humanity had proven that courage, intelligence, and unity could conquer fear, doubt, and overwhelming power. The Resolute moved onward, carrying with it the promise of a future where humanity would continue to grow, explore, and inspire. Across the galaxy, every race would remember the day a human flagship fought alone, endured, and emerged victorious. The legacy of that battle would echo forever.